Thank you. It's such an honor and pleasure to participate today in this very stimulating and, moving conference and meeting. And since this meeting is coming to an end, after very forceful statements, I will limit myself to some very short remarks about the current situation in Iran. And since this is done from a professional point of view, I limit myself not to emotions. I will not talk about emotions. I will talk about facts and events. There is no doubt that today, in the hot summer of 2025, the regime in Tehran is facing an existential and maybe its final crisis. Sudden and fundamental changes can no longer be excluded. If you look to the foreign policy situation, we realize that the fall of the Assad regime in Syria made Tehran to the big loser on the battlefields of the Middle East. In Lebanon, Syria, Yemen, Iraq, Tehran's regional policy has reached its peak. The Islamic resistance axis, forged since 1979, has broken down, it has collapsed. And the loss of reputation for the regime in Tehran is enormous. In addition, external pressure on Tehran has grown remarkably since the beginning of the second term of President Trump in the White House. Airstrikes in June 2025 against nuclear and military facilities have demonstrated glaring weaknesses in Iran's air defense and intelligence capabilities. Although Washington, after the strike, signaled that for the time being it did not want further military escalation, political and economic pressure on Tehran remains very high. Only yesterday, Scott Bessent, the US Secretary for the Treasury, announced new sanctions of the United States, which target Iran's oil exports and thus the crucial source of revenue for the regime. This will have a major impact on the future economic situation in Iran, where political discontent, social unrest, and economic decline are rapidly growing. We talked about the International Monetary Fund before. Its recent estimate shows that Iran's nominal gross domestic product will fall from $401 billion in 2024 to $341 billion this year. These figures reflect the devaluation of the rial, the national currency, and the rapid loss of purchasing power among large sections of the population, exacerbating the social economic situation, which is even sharpened by the current acute water shortages in major cities like Tehran and Isfahan. So, dramatic events in Iran can no longer be ruled out. And the question is, what are then the strengths and weaknesses of the Iranian opposition? In Europe and also in the US, some politicians and analysts still believe that reformers within the regime could bring about change. But this hopeful expectation stabilizes the status quo. And we should remember that talks with Tehran's supposedly moderate representatives in the past never helped to formulate, for example, an arms control regime for Iran's long-range weapons program that threatens its neighbors. Tehran did not renounce to its strategy of proxy wars. And above all, the human rights situation in Iran did not improve as a result of diplomatic contacts and talks with the regime. Thus, a broad coalition of all democratic forces against the regime is necessary. The NCRA has a program and a leadership that offers prospect of change. And the central force within the NCRI, the People's Mujahideen Organization of Iran, is by the regime considered its most dangerous opponent. And this is not only a compliment to the People's Mujahideen, but this clearly shows that the regime knows which organization is its most dangerous opponent. And the resistance units, the small groups of people who act inside Iran actively and independently from each other, they explicitly demand an end to the mullah's regime. They target its centers of repression and hope to break through the wall of resignation and hopelessness. And this hope, your hope, is not unrealistic, not at all. The country's economic situation is deteriorating to such an extent that the influential merchant classes, the bazaris, hard hit by the economic crisis, are beginning to turn away from the regime together with growing sections of the rapidly impoverished population. In this situation, the NCRA will, I believe, despite the harsh repression, continue its path towards the country's political renewal and for a better life for the Iranian people. The regime will come to an end, and I suppose rather quickly. The regime will come to an end, and your struggle and your sacrifices will not be in vain. Thank you.